Brilliant. Really helpful. Thank you. If the reformers were alive today, what do you think they would have to say about Western Christianity?
Oh my. I think they would have a lot to say. Um, Let me just give a few examples. First of all, they would have been shocked and disturbed, very disturbed, to see their names used to justify or explain the Enlightenment. Sometimes Luther, we have to be careful as Protestants because in our excitement to sometimes celebrate Luther and the Reformation, we can paint him at the Diet of Worms as if he is this Enlightenment man, standing as an individual, throwing off the church and tradition, and he's going to stand on his own 2 feet. I think Luther's words, though, reveal something different. He's standing not by himself, not by his own reason or his own insistence or stubbornness. He hasn't thrown off the church. In fact, he is so nervous because he thinks, I am trying to save the church that I know to be true, despite what I see in front of me. And for that, he needs scripture, of course. But he also says he needs right reason to interpret scripture with the church universal before him. And he slowly but surely learns that that's actually in his favor. Now, that's the first thing, is I think they would have been disturbed to find out that not long after them, there would be a break between faith and reason. There would be a break between theology and philosophy. There would be this divide, but that permeated so much of church and then even society as they knew it. The second thing I would say, and this one is quite pointed, like they all are, I think the reformers might rebuke us as well for neglecting and even compromising on matters of orthodoxy. When you look at the 16th century, they are concerned first and foremost with polemical issues around, say, justification, authority in the papacy, and everything in between those issues. But they don't feel the need to debate and argue over matters of orthodoxy, because there's just the assumption that there is agreement and continuity, and they dare not go. And in fact, when the radicals do, when the radicals start to question even matters of orthodoxy, the reformers are just livid, because they say, you are going to give credence to that accusation that we are innovators, that we are sectarians. So they don't tolerate it in the slightest. That said, I think they would be appalled to see that in the aftermath of, say, modern theology, in areas like the Trinity, the attributes of God and Christology, that evangelicals today, at best, have modified those doctrines. At worst, have even rejected some of them, or core components of them. I think they would issue a very strong rebuke, because in their minds that would undermine their entire project altogether. How are we supposed to talk about what God has done if we do not have a fundamental conviction of who he is? So it's, and then the third thing I would just add to all this is I do wonder if the reformers would sit us down and they would have a word with us about church itself. Why, they might ask, has church become such a performance? Why has it taken a turn towards the individual, the self? Why has it become so pragmatic in its orientation? How they would be baffled. How can you have people who go to church but have no commitment to a church?
Mm.
And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. I think on the positive side, what they would say to encourage us is they labored so hard in the midst of so much on the line, including their own lives. They did worry, will we live to see the Reformation through? But they labored so hard to ensure that the church was a rich experience that revolved around God, something quite objective. And this explains, and I do give this a lot of attention in my book. I even give examples of like liturgy. Why were they so concerned about liturgy? Well, because they were determined to both catechize the people and write sound doctrine, as Paul says, and then at the same time, that was meant to then bring about worship, right? And so everything from the reading of the scriptures to a baptism, to the Lord's Supper, to saying the Apostles' Creed together, and so much more. All of this was meant to bring the church together as an assembly, united around this sound doctrine, to confess it for the sake of participating in the great salvation that God had accomplished for them.
Yeah,
that's a very different picture of the church than I think we sometimes see today. And I think all three of these, though there's probably much more, all three of these areas would be deeply concerning to them, not simply for the sake of, alignment with them, but more fundamentally for the sake of the soul of the church itself.
Right. Yeah. Matthew, absolutely fascinating stuff.